The morning air in Central Park carried that quiet hush only found in big cities when most people are still asleep or already buried in their routines. Birds chirped from the trees. A few joggers passed by with steady breaths and earbuds in, and the sun peeked through the tall buildings like it was trying not to wake anyone too suddenly. On a weathered wooden bench near the duck pond, a man sat alone. He wore a charcoal gray overcoat that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, but you wouldn't know it just by looking. His posture was stiff, his hands folded neatly in his lap, and his dark sunglasses hid his eyes completely. To anyone passing by, he was just another quiet figure lost in thought. Maybe a businessman taking a rare break. Maybe someone nursing a private sadness. No one guessed he was one of the richest men in the country. He didn't come to the park often. In fact, this was the first time in over 3 years. But something had pushed him out of his penthouse that morning. Something heavier than work stress or board meetings. It was a kind of loneliness that didn't announce itself with tears or shouting, but with silence so deep it echoed in his chest. He'd woken up at 4 a.m., stared at the ceiling for 2 hours, and finally decided to walk. Not to a cafe, not to his office, just to move through the world like a regular person, even if only for an hour. His name wasn't important to the story right now. What mattered was what he carried inside. Years of building empires while letting his own life crumble quietly behind closed doors. He hadn't spoken to his brother in 7 years. His last real conversation with his father had ended in shouting, decades ago, before the old man passed away without ever saying sorry. And now, at 48, he owned buildings, companies, and yachts, but not a single person to call just to say hello. He watched the ducks paddle in lazy circles, their reflections rippling in the water. A little girl nearby was feeding them breadcrumbs, her small hands careful not to drop too much at once. She looked about 8, with dark curly hair pulled into 2 messy puffs and a bright yellow jacket that was slightly too big for her. She giggled every time a duck flapped its wings too close. The man almost smiled. Almost. Then, out of nowhere, the girl turned and looked straight at him. Not a glance. Really looked. Her eyes were wide, curious, and somehow hopeful. She hesitated for a second, then took a deep breath like she was about to jump off a diving board. Slowly, she walked over, her sneakers crunching on the gravel path. She stopped about 3 feet away, clutching something tightly in her fist. He tensed. He wasn't used to strangers approaching him, especially not children. His first instinct was to stand up and walk away, but something in her expression held him in place. "Hi," she said, her voice soft but clear. He nodded once. "Hello." She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Are you busy?" "No," he said, surprised by how rough his own voice sounded. "Not right now." She took another step closer. Then with both hands she held out a crumpled bill. It was a $50 bill, worn at the edges, folded so many times it looked like it might tear. "Here," she said. "I just need a dad for one day." He stared at her, at the money, at her face, which was now a mix of bravery and fear, like she knew this was a wild thing to ask but had no other choice. What?" he managed. She swallowed hard. "My mom says I can't ask strangers for stuff. But this isn't really stuff. It's just for today. Tomorrow you can go back to being you. But today, I need someone to be my dad. Just for one day. For my school thing." He didn't move. Didn't speak. His mind raced. Was this a scam? A social experiment? Some kind of prank? But the girl didn't look like she was acting. Her eyes were too real. Too tired for someone so young. "What school thing?" he finally asked. She looked down at her shoes. "There's this family picnic. All the kids bring their parents. Last year I went with my grandma, but she got sick and had to leave early. This year, my mom's working double shifts at the hospital. She can't miss it again or she'll lose her job." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And my real dad, he's not here anymore." The man felt something shift inside him. Like a door he'd welded shut years ago creaked open just a crack. He didn't ask how her father died, he didn't need to. The way she said "not here anymore" carried the weight of finality. He knew that tone. He'd used it himself when people asked about his own father. "Why me?" he asked gently. She shrugged, but her eyes stayed locked on his. "You looked alone and sad, like me sometimes. And you're wearing a nice coat, so I thought maybe you wouldn't say no to $50. She offered a small, nervous smile. "It's all I've got. I saved it from my lemonade stand and my birthday and helping Mrs. Chen walk her dog." He looked at the bill again. $50. To him it was less than the cost of his morning coffee, but to her, it was everything she had. She wasn't trying. To buy a dad, she was offering her whole world in exchange for one day of pretending. He should have said no. He had meetings, emails, a life built on saying no to anything that didn't serve his goals. But as he looked at her, really looked, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. Trust. Raw, unguarded, foolish trust. And it terrified him. "Do you even know my name?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, but I can call you whatever you want. My friend Leo calls his pretend dad Captain Steve. You can be Captain, Greycoat?" He almost laughed. "Almost. What's your name?" he asked. "Maya." "Maya," he repeated. It felt strange on his tongue, like a word he'd forgotten how to say. She waited, holding her breath. The ducks quacked in the background. A breeze rustled the leaves above them. He took a slow breath. Then, against every rule he'd lived by, he reached out and gently took the $50 bill from her hand. Not to keep it, but to unfold it, smooth it out, and then carefully place it back in her palm. "I don't want your money," he said. Her face fell. "Oh, okay, sorry for bothering you. But," he interrupted, "I'll do it. Not for the money. Just for today." Her eyes lit up like someone had flipped a switch. "Really? Really?" She threw her arms around his waist before he could react, squeezing tight. He froze. No one had hugged him like that in 20 years. It was awkward, sudden, and completely disarming. After a second, he slowly, carefully, patted her back. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," she whispered. He cleared his throat, suddenly unsure what to do next. "So, what do we do now?" She pulled back, grinning. "First, we get hot chocolate, my treat. Well, my other treat. I've got $3 left for my allowance." He nodded, standing up. His legs felt stiff, like he'd been sitting for hours instead of minutes. "Lead the way." As they walked toward the park's little cafe stand, Maya chatted nonstop. About her teacher, her best friend, the book she was reading about space, and how she wanted to be an astronaut or a vet or maybe both. He listened, really listened, and found himself asking questions. Not out of politeness, but because he wanted to know. At the stand, she ordered 2 hot chocolates with extra marshmallows. He paid before she could stop him, ignoring her protest with a quiet, considerate part of the deal. They sat on a different bench, sipping their drinks. The sun was higher now, warming the air. People were out in full force, couples strolling, kids chasing pigeons, tourists taking photos. But for the first time in a long time, the man didn't feel like an outsider looking in. He felt included. Even if it was just pretend. "Do you have kids?" Maya asked suddenly. "No," he said. "Never did." "Why not?" He hesitated. "I guess I was too busy building things that didn't matter as much as I thought." She nodded like she understood, which surprised him. "My dad used to say he was too busy too. But then he went away and I wished he'd been less busy." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He looked away, blinking hard. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to make you sad." "You didn't," he said, turning back. "You just reminded me of something important." They finished their hot chocolate in comfortable silence. Then Maya pulled a small photo from her backpack. It was worn at the corners, protected in a plastic sleeve. A man in uniform smiled back at them, strong jaw, kind eyes, arm around a younger Maya. "That's him," she said softly. He was in the army. He died saving his friends. My mom says he was a hero. He was, the man said. And he meant it. Maya tucked the photo away. So, are you ready to be my dad for today? He looked at her. Really looked. Saw the hope, the fear, the courage it took to ask a stranger for something so deeply personal. And in that moment, he made a silent promise. However this day went, he wouldn't let her down. Yeah, he said, standing up. Let's go be a family for a day. And just like that, the loneliest man in the city took the hand of a little girl who'd given him everything she had. And together, they walked toward something neither of them expected. A chance to heal. The sun had climbed higher, painting the park in gold, and the city hummed around them like a distant engine. Maya tugged gently on his sleeve, her eyes bright with purpose. Okay, she said, as if they were about to begin a mission. First stop, the hot dog cart by the carousel. My dad always got me one after soccer practice. Well, my real dad. She paused, then added quickly, but you can be the pretend after soccer practice dad today. He nodded, surprised by how easily she slipped into this role, how naturally she assumed he'd play along. There was no hesitation in her, only trust, and that trust felt heavier than any contract he'd ever signed. They walked side by side, not quite holding hands but close enough that their arms brushed now and then. He noticed how she pointed out things most adults would ignore, a squirrel balancing on a branch, a ladybug on a leaf, the way the light hit the fountain just right. Look, she'd say, and he'd look, really look. And for the first time in years, the world seemed full of small wonders instead of problems to solve. At the hot dog cart, she ordered one with mustard, onions, and extra pickles. My favorite, she declared proudly. He ordered the same, though he hadn't eaten a street hot dog since college. The vendor, a man with a thick beard and a kind smile, winked at Maya. Back again, kiddo? And who's this? My dad, she said without missing a beat. The man stiffened slightly but said nothing. The vendor just nodded. Good to see you two together. On the house today? No, Maya insisted, pulling out her $3 bill. I've got it. The vendor chuckled. Tell you what, how about you pay for the pickles and I'll cover the rest? She beamed. Deal. They ate on a nearby bench, the hot dogs messy and delicious in a way that defied logic. He watched her lick mustard off her thumb and laugh when a pickle slipped out of the bun. She didn't care about perfection. She cared about joy. And somehow, sitting there with ketchup on his coat sleeve and a child chattering about her soccer team's upcoming game, he felt lighter than he had in decades. After lunch, Maya led him to a small patch of grass near the playground. From her backpack, she pulled out a folded piece of paper covered in colorful drawings. We made kites in art class, she explained. Mine's a dragon, see? She unfolded it carefully. It was a simple diamond-shaped kite, hand-painted with red and gold scales, googly eyes glued on crookedly, and a tail made of ribbons. We're supposed to fly them with our families this weekend. But, you know, he nodded. Let's fly it. They found a spot with enough open space. He helped her tie the string, his fingers fumbling at first, so used to tapping screens and signing documents that tying knots felt foreign. But Maya didn't mind. She showed him how to hold it, how to run with the wind. Like this, she yelled, dashing forward. The kite wobbled, dipped, then suddenly caught the breeze and soared. Look, it's flying, she screamed, jumping up and down. He stood there, string in hand, watching the little dragon dance in the sky. Maya ran back to him, breathless, and grabbed his free hand. You did it. I didn't do anything, he said, smiling despite himself. You held the string, she said seriously. That's the most important part. He didn't answer, but her words stuck with him. Holding the string, not building it, not designing it, not owning it, just holding on while it flew. They spent the next hour chasing the kite, laughing when it nosedived into a bush, cheering when it climbed again. At one point, a group of kids from her school walked by with their parents. One of them called out, Hey, Maya, is that your dad? Maya didn't hesitate. Yeah. He came to fly my kite with me. The other kids waved. He waved back, awkward but sincere, and for the first time the word dad didn't feel like a lie. It felt like a gift. Later they sat on the grass, the kite resting beside them like a tired pet. Maya pulled out a notebook. Next thing, she said, we need to pick out a birthday card for my mom. Her birthday's tomorrow. Shouldn't we do that together? He asked gently. She shook her head. She can't come. She's working the night shift, but I want to give her something special. And I thought, maybe you could help me pick one. You seem like you know nice things. He almost laughed. I don't know much about birthday cards. But you know about people, she insisted. You looked sad this morning, but you still said yes. That means you understand hearts. He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. All right. Let's go find a card. They walked to a small corner store a few blocks away. Inside, the card aisle was overwhelming. Hundreds of options, glitter, flowers, jokes, tearjerker messages. Maya scanned them carefully, reading each one aloud in a whisper. To the best mom in the world. Too normal. Thanks for everything. Too vague, she frowned. I want one that says she's strong, and tired, and still smiles. He watched her, struck by how deeply she saw her mother. Not just as a parent, but as a person carrying weight. Then she stopped. This one. It was simple, a watercolor of a sunrise over mountains. Inside it read, "You keep going even when it's hard. That's your superpower." That's perfect, he said. She grinned. Now you write something. Me? Yeah. Moms love when other people say nice things about them. It makes them feel seen. He took the pen she offered. His hand hovered over the blank space. What could he possibly write? He didn't know her mother, but he knew what it meant to be unseen, to work yourself to the bone and wonder if anyone notices. Finally, he wrote, Your daughter is your greatest masterpiece, and you're doing an incredible job. Maya read it and her eyes got shiny. That's really good, she whispered. Better than I could have done. He shrugged, embarrassed. Just the truth. On the way back to the park, she told him about the birthday party she'd been invited to that afternoon. It's for Lila, she's in my class. Her parents rent out the whole pizza place. Everyone brings their moms and dads. Last year I went with my grandma, but she fell asleep at the table and I had to sit alone during musical chairs. Her voice dropped. I don't want to sit alone again. He stopped walking. Maya, I'm not really your dad. What if people ask questions? She looked up at him, unflinching. Then I'll tell them you're my special guest dad for the day. And if they don't like it, they can eat their pizza without me. She paused. Please, just for the party? You don't even have to talk much. Just sit with me. And maybe help me win the balloon pop game? He thought about his 3 p.m. video call with investors in Tokyo. About the emails piling up. About how absurd this all was. A billionaire playing dad at a kid's birthday party. But then he looked at her face. The hope. The quiet fear beneath the bravery. All right, he said. One party. Her whole body lit up. You're the best pretend dad ever. The pizza place was loud, chaotic, and smelled like melted cheese and birthday cake. Balloons bobbed from the ceiling. Kids shrieked with laughter and parents chatted in clusters, sipping soda and checking phones. Maya held his hand tightly as they walked in. Over here, a girl with pigtails waved from a table covered in party hats. Maya introduced him simply. This is my dad. No one questioned it.
Kids accepted things at face value.
Lila's mom smiled warmly. So glad you could make it. Maya talks about her dad all the time. He froze for a second, but Maya just squeezed his hand and led him to a seat. The party unfolded in a blur of games and noise. Musical chairs, he let Maya win by pretending to trip. Balloon animals, he failed spectacularly but made her laugh. And a cake shaped like a unicorn. During the gift opening, Maya sat beside him, leaning against his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. At one point, Lila's dad leaned over. Your daughter's got a great spirit. He almost corrected him. But then he looked down at Maya, who was watching the presents with quiet contentment, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. And he just said, yeah, she does. Later, during the balloon pop relay, Maya handed him a balloon and whispered, blow it up big. Bigger than anyone else. He did, cheeks puffing while kids giggled. When it popped, the sound was so loud everyone jumped, and Maya doubled over laughing. You're ridiculous, she gasped between laughs. And for the first time in his adult life, he didn't care about looking ridiculous. He cared about making her laugh. As the party wound down, Maya pulled him aside near the soda machine. Thank you, she said quietly. For today, it's been the best day. He crouched down so they were eye level. You're the one who made it special, she shook her head. No, you showed up. That's the hard part. He didn't know how to respond to that, so he just hugged her, awkwardly at first, then fully, letting himself feel the warmth of her small arms around his neck. When they finally left, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Maya was tired now, her steps slower, her voice softer. "Can we walk by the duck pond again?" she asked. Of course, they walked in comfortable silence. Back at the bench where they'd first met, she sat down and patted the spot beside her. He sat. "I have to go home soon," she said. "Mom gets off at 7. He nodded. "I should get going too." But neither of them moved. "Do you think maybe you could come to the school picnic next week?" she asked, not looking at him. "It's on Saturday. All the dads help with the sack race and the tug of war." He hesitated. This wasn't part of the deal. The deal was one day. But then he remembered her sitting alone at last year's party. Remembered the way she'd held out that $50 bill like it was a lifeline. "I'll be there," he said. Her head snapped up. "Really?" "Really?" She threw her arms around him again, and this time, he hugged her back without thinking. As they walked toward her apartment building, a modest brick structure with flower boxes on the windows, he felt a strange ache in his chest. Not pain, something closer to longing, like he'd tasted something beautiful and now knew what he'd been missing. At the door, a woman stood waiting. Tired eyes, scrubs under her coat, but a soft smile when she saw Maya. "There you are. I was getting worried." "Mom, this is my friend," Maya said carefully. "He helped me with my kite and the birthday card and Lila's party." The woman looked at him, surprised but not suspicious. "Oh, thank you so much. Maya's been, well, she's been carrying a lot. I'm glad I could help," he said. Maya turned to him. "Will I see you again?" He looked at her mother, then back at Maya. "Yes," he said. "You will." And with that promise hanging in the evening air, he turned and walked away, back toward his world of silence and glass towers. But something had changed. The loneliness was still there, but now it had a name, and a face, and a voice that said, "I just need a dad for one day." He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long time, he wanted to find out. The week after that first day moved slower than any week he could remember. Not because of boredom, no, it was the opposite. Every morning he woke up thinking about the little girl with the yellow jacket and the crumpled $50 bill. He'd catch himself staring out the window of his office, watching parents walk their kids to school across the street, wondering what it felt like to be needed like that. Not for your money, not for your title, but just for showing up. He kept his promise. On Saturday morning, he showed up at the school picnic wearing jeans and a plain sweater. No suit, no watch worth more than a car. He'd even practiced tying his shoes extra tight so they wouldn't come undone during the sack race. When Maya saw him, she sprinted across the field like her feet barely touched the ground. "You came," she yelled, skidding to a stop in front of him. "Of course I came," he said, trying to sound casual, like this was something he did every weekend. She grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the activity station. "You're on my team for tug of war, and you have to help me with the egg and spoon race. And oh, they're doing face painting after lunch. Can I get a dragon?" "Like my kite?" He nodded, smiling. "Whatever you want." The day unfolded in a whirl of laughter, grass stains, and sticky hands. He lost the sack race on purpose, tripping dramatically so Maya could win. He held the rope in tug of war with more strength than he'd used in years. Not to dominate, but to make sure her team didn't get yanked into the mud. During the picnic lunch, he sat cross-legged on a blanket, eating a slightly squashed peanut butter sandwich Maya had packed for him. "Mom said you probably don't eat normal food," she'd whispered. Other parents nodded at him, asked how long he'd been back in town, assumed he was just another dad trying his best. And for a few hours he was. After the picnic, he started showing up more. Not every day, never too much, never without checking with Maya's mother first. But often enough that the school secretary began to recognize him. Often enough that Maya's teachers stopped giving him curious looks and started handing him extra art projects for Maya's dad. He'd sit at their kitchen table while Maya did homework, sipping tea her mother made, listening to stories about her day. He never offered advice unless asked. Never tried to fix anything, he just stayed. One rainy afternoon, he brought board games. They played checkers, then a silly card game that involved making animal noises. Maya's mother watched from the doorway, arms crossed, but her eyes were soft. Later, when Maya went to brush her teeth, the woman finally spoke. I don't know what your intentions are, she said quietly, but I need you to be careful with her heart. He looked her straight in the eye. I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm just here. She studied him for a long moment. She talks about you like you've always been part of her life. Like you're real. I want to be real, he said. Not as a father, but as someone who cares. She nodded slowly. Then keep showing up. But don't disappear. That's the one thing she can't handle again. He promised. And he meant it. But the world outside that small apartment didn't care about promises made over tea and checkers. Back at his office, things were unraveling. His absence hadn't gone unnoticed. Board members exchanged glances during meetings. Emails piled up with increasing urgency. One morning, his assistant, a woman who'd worked for him for 15 years, handed him a folder with a tight expression. They're calling it emotional instability, she said quietly. Says here you've missed 3 key investor calls, delegated major decisions without explanation, and spent uncharacteristic time in non-professional settings. They're worried. And someone's whispering about a takeover. He barely reacted. Let them whisper. But sir, your company? My company will survive, he said, closing the folder. I'm not sure I would have if I'd stayed locked in this tower. She didn't argue. She just nodded, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. Still, the pressure mounted. A rival CEO, someone he'd outmaneuvered years ago, began buying up shares quietly. Rumors spread in the business press. Is the reclusive tech titan losing his edge? Has personal turmoil compromised his judgment? He ignored it all. Until the day he got a call during Maya's school play. He was sitting in the back row watching Maya play a tree, complete with green paper leaves and a very serious expression, when his phone buzzed. It was his legal team. The rival was moving fast, filing motions, pressuring shareholders, using his unexplained absences as proof he was unfit to lead. He stepped into the hallway, heart pounding. What do you need me to do? He asked. Come in, today, sign these documents, make a public statement, reassure them you're still in control. He looked through the door. On stage, Maya was swaying gently, whispering her one line. The forest grows strong when roots hold tight. He took a breath. I'll be there tomorrow. Sir, it has to be today. Tomorrow, he said firmly and hung up. He went back inside and watched the rest of the play. Afterward, Maya ran to him, leaves still stuck in her hair. Did you see me? Was I a good tree? The best tree I've ever seen, he said, and meant it. But that night, lying in his quiet penthouse, he felt the walls closing in. Not the physical walls, the ones in his mind. The old fears crept back. That he was weak for caring, foolish for choosing a child's smile over a billion-dollar deal, naive to think he could have both. The next morning, he didn't go to the office. Instead, he went to Maya's school with cupcakes, chocolate with rainbow sprinkles, her favorite. He told the teacher he was Uncle something, and she didn't question it. Maya beamed when she saw him, but later, during recess, she pulled him aside. Are you okay? She asked, studying his face. Why do you ask? You look like you did that first morning. Like you're carrying something heavy. He was stunned. No one had noticed that before, not his lawyers, not his board, not even his closest advisors. But an 8-year-old girl saw it in his eyes. I'm just figuring some things out, he said. She nodded wisely. My mom says grown-ups forget they're allowed to ask for help. He almost laughed. Maybe she's right. Over the next few days, he tried to balance both worlds. Mornings at the office, afternoons with Maya. He signed documents between helping her build a model volcano for science class. He took conference calls while sitting on her bedroom floor, listening to her read aloud from her book. It wasn't perfect. Some days he was distracted. Some days he showed up late. But he showed up. Then came the night Maya's mother called. She's not sleeping, the woman said, voice thick with worry. She had a nightmare about you leaving. She keeps saying, oh, what if he changes his mind? His chest tightened. I won't. I know you mean that. But she's scared, and I can't keep letting her get attached if this is just temporary. He was silent for a long time. It's not temporary, he finally said. But I understand your concern. Let me talk to her. The next day, he came over early. Maya was quiet, not her usual chatty self. She sat on the couch hugging a stuffed rabbit. He sat beside her. Hey, hi, you had a bad dream? She nodded, eyes downcast. Do you want to tell me about it? She shook her head, then whispered, I dreamed you went back to your big building and forgot about me. I could never forget you, he said gently. But why not? She asked, looking up. You don't have to be here. You have your own life. Your own important things. He took a deep breath. You're one of my important things now. But I'm not your real kid. No, he admitted. You're not. But that doesn't mean you don't matter. In fact, maybe it means you matter even more because I chose to be here. Not because I have to. Because I want to. Tears welled in her eyes. Promise you won't go away? I promise, he said. Not unless you tell me to. She threw her arms around him and he held her tight, feeling the small tremors in her shoulders as she cried quietly. After that, something shifted. He stopped thinking of his time with her as a break from his real life. It was his real life now, just a different version of it. He started leaving the office earlier. Delegating more, saying no to things that didn't truly matter. He even began eating dinner with them sometimes. Simple meals of pasta or soup, conversations about Maya's day, her mother's patients, the stray cat they'd started feeding on the fire escape. One evening, as he helped Maya with math homework, her mother sat at the table grading papers. The apartment was warm, filled with the smell of garlic and the soft hum of the refrigerator. For the first time in years, he felt peace, not the quiet of an empty penthouse, but the calm of belonging. But peace never lasts long when you're standing in two worlds. The final blow came in the form of a letter. Not an email. A real printed letter on thick paper delivered by courier. It was from the board. They'd scheduled an emergency meeting. The rival CEO had gathered enough support to force a vote on his leadership. The message was clear: come back fully or step down. That night he didn't sleep. He walked the length of his apartment staring at the city lights, torn between the empire he'd built and the family he'd found. The next morning, he didn't go to either place. Instead, he went to the park, the same bench where it all began. He sat there for hours, watching the world move on without him. Then just before sunset, Maya appeared. She must have heard from her mother that he hadn't shown up at school. She walked over slowly, holding a folded piece of paper. I wrote you something, she said, handing it to him. He opened it. In her careful handwriting, it read, You don't have to be my real dad, but you're the only one who showed up. And that's enough for me. Below it, she'd drawn a picture. 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. One tall, one small, one in the middle. And above them, in big letters, Our family. He read it 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his coat pocket, right over his heart. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. He wasn't going to choose between his company and this little girl. He was going to rebuild his life so both could exist, but on his terms, not theirs. The next day, he walked into the boardroom not in a suit, but in the same sweater he'd worn to the picnic. He didn't apologize. He didn't beg. He simply said, I'm still your CEO, but I'm also a person now. And if that's a problem, then maybe it's time for new leadership. To his surprise, half the room stood up and clapped. The assistant who'd warned him months ago gave him a small, proud nod. The rival CEO backed down. Not because he wanted to, but because the board realized something. A leader who could love was stronger, not weaker. That evening, he returned to the apartment. Maya ran to the door before he even knocked. You came back, she said. I told you I would, he replied. And this time when he said it, he knew it wasn't just for a day or a week, or even a year. It was forever. Life settled into a new rhythm after the boardroom showdown. Quieter, steadier, like a river that had finally found its course. He still ran his company, but the way he did it changed. He cut meetings that didn't need to happen. He hired more people so no one had to work weekends unless absolutely necessary. He even started a small foundation, not with fanfare or press releases, but quietly, funding after-school programs for kids who'd lost parents in service, helping families with medical bills, supporting teachers in underfunded schools. He never mentioned Maya by name, but everyone who knew him could see where the heart of it came from. At the apartment, things felt easier too. Maya stopped flinching every time he said, I'll see you tomorrow. Her mother no longer watched him like he might vanish in the night. They'd fallen into a kind of unspoken family. Shared dinners, weekend walks, homework at the kitchen table with the radio playing softly in the background. He wasn't called Dad anymore, not exactly. Sometimes it was Hey You, sometimes Mister. And once during a thunderstorm when she crawled into the living room wrapped in a blanket, she'd whispered, "Can you stay until I fall asleep?" He did. And in that moment, titles didn't matter. But peace, as it always does, came with its own kind of test. It started with a phone call one Tuesday afternoon. He was helping Maya glue sequins onto a cardboard crown for her school's Kindness Week when his assistant's name flashed on his screen. He almost didn't answer, but something in his gut told him to step into the hallway. "The board's worried again," she said, voice low. "Not about your leadership. About the optics." "Optics?" he repeated. "They're saying your involvement with Maya's family looks like a publicity stunt. That you're using a child's story to soften your image after the takeover scare. There's a piece being drafted by a business magazine. They're calling it the Billionaire's Redemption Project." He went cold. "They think I'm pretending? They don't know what to think. All they see is a man who never cared about people suddenly spending every free hour with a little girl he's not related to. To them it doesn't make sense unless there's a motive." He leaned against the wall, heart pounding. "Tell them the truth." "The truth doesn't sell ads," she said gently. "And if this runs, it could hurt her. Reporters might show up at her school. At her door." He closed his eyes. The last thing Maya needed was strangers with cameras asking why a rich man was playing house with a kid from a working-class neighborhood. That night, he barely slept. He paced his apartment, replaying every moment, the park, the hot dogs, the kite, the birthday party. Had he been selfish? Had he let his own need for connection blind him to the risks he was bringing into her life? The next morning, he didn't go to the apartment. He sent a text instead. "Something's come up. I'll explain soon." Lovey Maya called 3 times. He didn't answer. By the 3rd day, her mother showed up at his office, not angry, but firm. She stood in his doorway, arms crossed, eyes tired but clear. "She thinks you left because she did something wrong," the woman said. "She cried herself to sleep last night. Wrote you another letter, then tore it up." He looked down at his desk, shame burning in his chest. "I was trying to protect her. From what?" she asked softly. "From you? Or from the world?" He didn't answer. "Listen," she said, stepping inside and closing the door. "I get it. You're scared, but pulling away now? That's not protection. That's abandonment, and she's already been abandoned once." Her words hit like stones. "I didn't mean to. I know you didn't," she interrupted. "But intention doesn't heal a broken heart. Presence does." She left then, but her words stayed. That evening, he walked to the apartment. He didn't knock. He just stood outside, hoping she'd see him through the window. After a few minutes, the door opened. Maya stood there in her pajamas, eyes red-rimmed but dry now. She didn't smile, didn't run to him. Just looked at him like she was trying to decide if he was real. "I'm sorry," he said, voice rough. She crossed her arms. "Why did you leave?" "Because I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that people would say mean things about us." "Afraid they'd hurt you?" She frowned. "But you're the one who taught me that bullies only win if you run away." He stared at her. "When did I say that?" "When we played soccer in the park, remember? That big kid kept kicking the ball away from me and you said, 'Don't let fear decide your next move.'" He remembered. He'd said it without thinking. And now she was throwing his own lesson back at him. He crouched down. "You're right. I let fear decide for me. And that wasn't fair to you." She studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she held out her hand. In it was a new letter, neatly folded, sealed with a sticker of a dragon. He took it. "Can I read it now?" She nodded. Inside, in her careful handwriting, it said, "Dear you, I don't care what other people think. I know who you are. You showed up when no one else did. You stayed when it got hard. That's not a project. That's a person. And I'm proud to know you. P.S. Please come back. The volcano needs a second eruption." He looked up, eyes stinging. "The volcano?" She grinned, a real one this time. "Yeah, we used baking soda and vinegar last time, but I think if we add dish soap, it'll foam more." "Wanna try?" He stood up, tucking the letter into his pocket. "I'd love to." From that day on, he stopped hiding. He still kept their life private. No photos on social media, no interviews, but he didn't disappear. He walked Maya to school sometimes, even when he knew people were watching. He sat in the parent section at her school concerts, clapping louder than anyone. He even started attending parent-teacher conferences, not as a guest, but as the man who helped with homework and packed her lunch when her mother worked late. And then came the idea that changed everything. One rainy Saturday, they were sorting through old boxes in the apartment's storage closet. Maya found a photo album, her father in uniform smiling with her as a baby holding her tiny hand. She traced the picture with her finger quiet for once. He used to write letters, she said softly, even when he was far away. Mom says they kept her going. He sat beside her. What did he say in them? Stuff like, be brave and take care of your mom, and I'm proud of you even when I'm not there. She looked up. Do you think other kids miss their dads like I do? He thought about the foundation he'd started, about the quiet grief he'd seen in the eyes of children at the programs they funded. Yeah, he said. I think a lot of kids do. That night he couldn't sleep. An idea kept turning in his mind, simple, powerful, real. The next week he gathered his team. Not the corporate executives, but the people who ran the foundation. I want to start a letter writing program, he said, for kids who've lost a parent in service. We'll connect them with volunteers, teachers, veterans, community members who'll write to them once a month. Just to say, I see you. You matter. Someone asked, what's the goal? No goal, he said. Just connection. No money exchanged. No expectations. Just words on paper that say, you're not alone. They loved it. Within months, hundreds of kids were receiving letters. Some wrote back. Some didn't. But the ones who did often said the same thing. It feels like someone's holding the string while I fly. He wrote letters too, under a different name, so no one would know it was him. But Maya knew. She'd catch him at the kitchen table late at night, pen in hand, writing slowly, carefully. Who are you writing to? She'd ask. A boy in Texas, he'd say. His dad was a firefighter. She'd nod, then go back to her own letter, to a girl in Oregon whose mom was a nurse who didn't come home from her. Last shift, they never talked about it much, but in those quiet moments they were healing the world, one envelope at a time. One evening, as they walked home from the park, Maya slipped her hand into his. You know, she said, I used to think having a dad meant someone who lived with you. Now I think it's someone who shows up even when it's hard. He squeezed her hand. You taught me that. No, she said, smiling up at him. We taught each other. And in that simple truth, they found something deeper than blood, something built on choice, on courage, on $50 and a kite and a promise kept. The world kept spinning. The business press eventually moved on to other stories. The foundation grew. Maya's grades improved. Her mother got a promotion that meant fewer night shifts. And he finally learned how to breathe, not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, but as a man who'd been given a second chance not to fix the past, but to build something real in the present. And every night, before he left the apartment, Maya would hand him a small drawing or a note to take home. Sometimes it was a joke, sometimes a question about space, sometimes just the words, thanks for today. He kept every single one in a box on his nightstand, right next to the framed $50 bill, because in the end it wasn't about money or titles, or even family in the traditional sense. It was about showing up, and he planned to keep doing that for as long as they'd have him. The morning of Maya's 9th birthday dawned soft and clear, the kind of day that feels like a gift in itself. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen window of the small apartment, catching dust motes in the air like tiny stars. Her mother moved quietly, setting out plates and folding napkins while Maya sat at the table, legs swinging, watching the clock. She wasn't impatient, just expectant, like someone waiting for a promise to land gently in her hands. He wasn't coming with presents. Not this time. He'd learned that the best gifts weren't wrapped in paper but in presents. Still, he'd spent the night before carefully filling out legal documents with the help of a trusted lawyer. Not adoption papers, not guardianship in the full sense, but something quieter, more respectful, a formal agreement naming him as emergency contact, medical decision-maker if needed, and lifelong mentor. It was his way of saying, without overstepping, I'm not going anywhere. He arrived just after 10, carrying a plain manila envelope and a single red balloon tied to his wrist. Maya opened the door before he could knock. You're late by 3 minutes, she said, but she was smiling. Traffic, he lied, handing her the balloon. Happy birthday. She took it, then looked past him. No giant robot? No pet dragon? No, he said, stepping inside. Just me. That's enough, she said simply, and closed the door behind him. The backyard party was small, just a few friends from school. her mother's sister and her kids, and the neighbor who always saved Maya the best cookies. There was a cake shaped like a book. Maya had declared she wanted to be a writer now, not just an astronaut or a vet. Paper lanterns strung between the fence posts, and a playlist of silly songs her mother had made. He didn't hover. He didn't try to be the center of attention. He helped set up chairs, poured lemonade, and played referee during a heated game of tag. At one point, Maya's friend tripped and skinned her knee. While the other adults fussed, he knelt down, pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket, and held it gently over the scrape. "You're brave," he told the girl. "Braver than most grown-ups I know." The girl stopped crying. Maya watched from a few feet away, eyes shining with something deeper than pride. Later, when it was time for cake, everyone gathered around. Maya made a wish, eyes squeezed shut, hands clasped, and blew out the candles in one breath. Applause followed, laughter, the clinking of forks on plates. After cake, her mother stood up. "Okay, Maya," she said, voice warm but serious. "There's one more thing." Maya looked surprised. "But I already opened everything." Her mother nodded toward him. "This isn't from me." He took a breath, then walked over and knelt so they were eye to eye. From the manila envelope, he pulled out 2 copies of the agreement. Simple, clear, written in language even a child could understand. He didn't hand it to her like a contract. He laid it gently on the picnic table. "This," he said, "is my promise to you. Not because I have to, but because I choose to." She read the first few lines slowly. "Emergency contact, mentor, lifelong support." Her voice wavered. "What does this mean?" "It means," he said softly, "that if anything ever happens, if your mom's at work and you get sick, if you need someone to sign a school form, if you just want someone to talk to at 3 in the morning, I'll be there. Not as a replacement, but as your person." Tears filled her eyes. She looked at her mother, who nodded, tears in her own eyes too. "You okay with this?" Maya asked her. "I've been okay with it for a long time," her mother said. "He's earned it." Maya turned back to him. "So, you're really staying?" "Forever," he said. "Unless you fire me." She threw her arms around him, and this time the hug wasn't just gratitude, it was belonging. Later, as the guests began to leave, he helped clean up. Folding chairs, stacking plates, blowing out the last lantern. When the yard was quiet again, just the 3 of them under the fading light, Maya tugged his sleeve. "Can we go to the park? Just for a little while?" Her mother smiled. "Go ahead. I'll be here." They walked the familiar path in comfortable silence. The duck pond was calm, the water reflecting the pink-orange sky. They sat on their bench, the same one where it all began. "I still have the $50, he said suddenly. She looked at him. "You kept it?" He pulled the bill from his wallet. It was no longer crumpled. It had been smoothed, pressed, and framed in a small, clear plastic sleeve he carried with him. "I keep it in my office," he said. "Right next to your first drawing of us." She laughed softly. "That was so bad. You looked like a potato with glasses. And you looked like a sunbeam with pigtails," he said. "Still do." They sat for a while, watching the ducks glide across the water. Then Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. "I wrote you something too." He opened it. This time the handwriting was steadier, more confident. It read, "Dear you, thank you for saying yes that day. Thank you for hot dogs, kites, bad balloon animals, and staying when it got hard. You didn't fix my life, you just walked through it with me. And that's better. I don't need a hero. I just needed someone who showed up, and you did. Love. Maya." He folded it carefully and put it in his pocket, right over his heart. "You know," he said after a while, "I used to think success was about buildings and bank accounts. Now I think it's about moments like this." "Like sitting on a bench?" she asked, smiling. "Like choosing each other," he said, "every single day." Back at the apartment, her mother was washing dishes. He didn't go inside right away. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking up at the window where a single lamp glowed. Inside, 2 lives had opened their door to him. Not out of need, but out of trust, and he had walked through it not as a savior, not as a billionaire, but as a man learning how to love. Over the next year, life unfolded in small, beautiful ways. He attended every school event, not as a guest, but as part of the family. He helped Maya build a birdhouse for the fire escape. He taught her how to ride a bike, running beside her until she finally pedaled on her own, shouting, "I'm doing it!" He even let her pick out a tie for him once, bright green with tiny rockets just for Mentor Appreciation Day at school. At work, things changed too. He restructured his company's mission around people, not just profit. He started a policy that gave employees paid time off to attend their children's events. When a young intern lost her father, he didn't send flowers. He sat with her in silence for an hour, then offered her a flexible schedule so she could grieve without losing her job. People noticed. Not in headlines, but in whispers. He's different now. Kinder. Present. And it all started with a little girl holding out $50 and saying, "I just need a dad for one day." One evening, about a year after that first meeting, he found himself back in his penthouse, but it didn't feel empty anymore. On the wall above his desk hung two things: the framed $50 bill and a photo taken at Maya's birthday party. In it, the three of them stood together, her mother in the middle, Maya grinning with cake on her cheek, and him, arm loosely around Maya's shoulders, smiling like he'd finally come home. He didn't need grand gestures or dramatic endings. What he had was real: a shared dinner, a homework question at bedtime, a phone call just to say, "How was your day?" Love wasn't in the money he gave. It was in the time he stayed, and sometimes that's all it takes: a single act of courage from a child, and a single choice to say yes from a man who'd forgotten how. Now, when he walked through Central Park, people didn't see a lonely billionaire. They saw a man holding a little girl's hand, listening as she told him about her latest story idea, or the new bird that nested in their fire escape planter. He wasn't perfect. He still worked too much sometimes. He still forgot to buy milk. He still struggled with saying "I love you" out loud, though Maya knew it anyway, in the way he always saved her the last cookie, in the way he showed up, rain or shine. And that was enough, because family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's a $50 bill, a kite in the sky, and a promise kept, not for a day, but for a lifetime. As the sun set on another ordinary evening, he walked Maya home, her small,